Does anybody remember a guy named Matt Pinfield?
This is Auto Collabs.
MTV. Gosh.
Couldn't pin the man if you asked me.
No, baba. So he called Darren Doane, today's guest, one of the most prolific directors of our time. Matt Pinfield was a big shot at MTV. He was the guy that everybody listened to and looked at. And he was right in so many more ways than he even realized at the time, because Darren has directed music videos, and when you add them up on YouTube, you get to the B's in views, billions.
Wow.
So we're talking about Blink 182, we're talking about Jason Mraz, Kid Rock, right? Yeah. Just the Zach Brown band, like it goes on and on. He actually launched the Toyota Tundra for Toyota with Saatchi and Saatchi, and guess what? Wow. They shut down the shoot for a day because he shot the truck while it was dirty.
Wow.
So if you've seen a truck commercial that has dirt on the truck and it's working like it's supposed to, it's because Darren was like, are you people kidding me? What do you mean we can't shoot the truck when it's dirty? That's why people buy trucks. Like, it's not a secret, right? And like they literally had a whole meltdown over this. Darren Doane has a term called doning it.
Yeah, and it actually wasn't him that said that. I
didn't know that.
So I listened to the whole story. The backstory on it was he had a buddy that was on a shoot with him and basically came up to him and looked over at someone else who was following his rhythm of like shooting low, cinematic, right? That deep feel that you and I get to know of him. And he was like, look, he's over there doning it. Right. And so like then it's just kind of come and it's kind of come full circle. And I guess around like music, a lot of people know that kind of phrase. But one of the things that I love, and I actually threw this as I was heading here because I knew we were going to be recording a ton of content and we were going to be running hard at everything we were going to do today. The phrase stuck in my head that was that was the first part of a podcast that he did from his truck. No doubt, which most podcasters know is like death to a podcast because the audio is terrible.
Audio through a phone.
And at the end of that intro, he said, "We are not precious here," and that phrase sticks with me because what it allows you to do is it frees you up to run and just go. And so that's something that we've taken to today as we're recording this segment and a lot of other things that I think all of us have done through our legacy so far in automotive, if you can call that a legacy. But like what we've already done is just, hey, we're not precious. We're just going to go and we're going to start and we're going to press play and see what happens. And I think that mindset is something that anybody in business can take and run with.
Absolutely. We can't wait for you to make. I have no idea what he's going to say, but I know it's going to be awesome. The Rebel, doning it, Darren Doane.
So, funny story. This is years ago. And by the way, this is the first time I had ever heard the reference. So I'm walking through a Brookstone in the Colorado airport, and the staff is following me around the kind of the kiosk, and I'd look and they'd be like, ooh, pretend they're stocking shelves.
Who did they think you were?
And so as I'm leaving the store, sir, you're not Seth Rogen, are you? And I was wearing like a Newsies kind of cap. And I'm like, bro, they're like, yeah, well, we thought you were preparing for a role. I'm like, I'm 4.5 feet shorter than Seth Rogen for starters. But I never heard this. I posted on Facebook. I'm like, guys, you'll never guess what happened. And everyone's like, holy crap, you do look like Seth Rogen. I've done hiring interview. I'm not kidding you. I do hiring interviews. I'm like, okay, any questions from you? They're like, has anybody ever told you look like Seth Rogen? This has now been going on for years and years and years.
I've never heard that, and Darren just nailed it right out of the gate.
Yep. And funny enough, I was in the movie Newsies, and he just made a Newsies reference.
Were you?
No, you weren't.
Yeah, I am. I was. That's where I met Christian Bale. My first short film was with Christian Bale because I was.
See, this is how every Darren Doane conversation goes.
I was because my dad was in the film industry, so I'd go do a little extra stuff growing up with my dad. I'm 19 years old and they are making Newsies. I get a call from Central Casting and they're like, hey, we need some extras for a movie. And I was like 19. I was like, I'm a director now. And the guy was
I
like,
don't do
hey.
extras.
Yeah, exactly. He calls back 3 months later, so I'm even more broke at that point. And he goes, look, it's
How about
45.
now?
He goes, it's 45 days of work. I'll pay you $165 a day plus meal penalties. And I was like, oh, I'm in. And then so I used that money, and then at meeting Christian Bale on the set, made my first short film, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I'm in Spots Gang. I'm a featured extra / dancer in Newsies. So.
My girls watch that show all the time. Where in the movie are you?
I'm in Spots Gang, so I'd have to show you. Widescreen version helps. Literally, if it's the TV version,
like,
half of my scenes are cut out. I was always like the edge fringe guy, but yeah.
So you got
yeah, I have a close up. I have a close up on, and we're off to the races again. I get a close up on, and we're off, and I get the background, and we're off to the races again.
So when was the last time you did any of those dance parts?
What are you talking about? That's how he gets out of bed in the morning.
I'm a dancer. Funny again. I don't like this whole show about.
Here we go. It's like funny story. So I was hanging out.
I was
with
an extra.
Marlon Brando.
I'm an extra. Well, I got a Brando story, but I'm an extra, and I'm walking. We're at the Paramount or the Universal backlot, and I'm walking, and someone yells from one of the fake alleys. They say, "Hey, you got 20 minutes left if you want to get a massage." And I was like, okay. And so I go down, and they had all these massage tables out. They thought I was a dancer. The dancers got massages all day, so I jump into a massage. But from that point on, I kid you not, I then have to act as a dancer for the rest of Newsies so I can keep getting the massages. So I just made my way into the dance world, so.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, this is not how I expected this interview to start. But honestly, I never have many expectations other than I have no idea where the conversation is going to go every time whether it's just a quick phone call or we're recording for a podcast. Darren, thank you so much for giving some of your time today. I know you just kind of got this whole Ty Pennington vibe going on right now with the shiplap behind you and the V-neck, which is a new look for you, which I really appreciate. But let's bring it back. We're serious podcasters.
Launching my new look today.
Today, he's the new Darren Doane. You can see him at a SodaCon. Let's talk for a second about let's bring back automotive industry. Okay, because our audience is primarily automotive. You have so many relationships with business owners in so many industries across the country, from pharmaceuticals to filmmaking to surfing to pro gaming, like the whole gamut.
Yeah.
What are some of the similarities you're seeing across the board? And, maybe ones that you think would probably be relevant to retail auto?
Well, first, I was blown away on the post that you guys had about Best Buy. I shared that.
About hiring the Best Buy employees.
Yeah, no. Michael, did you see that post they gave? I don't know if you saw that post they gave on that, but it was. I thought that was so.
I don't follow these people.
Yeah, I know. That's why I wanted to cue that up. But it was
smack him across.
So
I know I had dirt on you before we started.
Michael's like, where am I?
Yeah.
How'd I get here? But no, I think that is. I think auto, again, what I love about the auto industry and what I've loved the last couple of years and what I'm noticing is it is becoming one of those industries that it turns out isn't going anywhere. And the opportunities that continue to grow within automotive, because ultimately automotive is the real estate business. And it turns out when you own real estate, you can pivot, not just pivot, you can flip-flop. You can say, you know what, we're doing this for the next year or the next 6 months, or we're doing this, or we're doing that. And so to me, what's happening in automotive is much like we talk about social media and content communication, every single thing is on the table. And what's great about the DNA about automotive is the DNA within automotive is so wacky that they're down for. Well, you think of the old school. Again, I grew up in Southern California, so for me, it was Cal Worthington. I'm Cal Worthington. Come on down. And he's there at the lot, and they got balloons, and they got giraffes walking around. I grew up in the 70s My dad worked on a film called Used Cars, which was, to me, was like a classic growing up. Used Cars is just amazing. But it was wild. Like the automotive industry is still wild. Like the automotive industry in the age that we live in still has testosterone. Like it is still the Wild West. And so now that no one knows what's going on, the people that are going to win in any industry are going to be the ones that are like, let's try it. Like, let's, I'm watching my language here, but let's just go, let's do this. And in the automotive DNA it's wild and they're down for anything. Right?
Kyle disagrees.
I got to tell you, I'm sick of Kyle. And if he wants to leave again, he can leave.
Kyle's like, forget this.
You know what I think is?
I left the podcast.
He was like, I'm out. I disagree.
I came back because I got this from someone just a few years back. She was an employee of mine, and she was like, "This is exactly what like being an employee of yours is like." But I think it's actually the automotive industry. If you can't see, it says you don't have to be crazy to work here. We'll train you. And that's like automotive. Like I see people come into automotive and they're like, okay, I'm going to be a professional salesperson. And by like 2 months in, they're like, this place is crazy. And all of a sudden, like 4 months in, they're just one of the gang. And there's this grit and this energy that happens whether you're at a store or you're at an industry event. And like, it's wild.
And by the way, and I can't wait to hear Michael on this, but I'll just add this. When things are ultimately fueled by a ton of money somewhere, things can get wild. Because at any given point, for it to succeed, they can just turn that tap on. And any kind of industry where you can turn the tap on and just kind of get it can get wild. You can try things. And to me, those things is still what makes automotive just incredibly perfect right now.
I was going to say, I love where you went with that because, I mean, we've interviewed individuals like Damon Lester, who just bought his first store. And that was one of the things, like, there's so much doom and gloom out there, like, save everything, the walls are falling in. And he's like, I'm an accountant. Like, I'm into the forensics of money. And I think now's a good time to get into the business. I think, Kyle, if you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he even said something about like a 20 and 30 year game plan. So now you saying this, it just really creates a nice reference point to say, no, there's a lot of opportunity here. But then I also started thinking about our own human nature, which like there's a lot of narrative in the industry about the doom and gloom and, oh, this new thing and rapid change. You know who else said rapid change? Henry Ford. And like every 10-year generation after that, like we have this tendency as human beings to be like, well, but if it's happening to me for the first time, it must be the first time that change has ever happened. And it's uncomfortable. It's like, dude, you're not that special. So calm down.
Yep.
You said things.
Yep.
Go ahead. Respond to that.
Well, I'll just say, it's like that short-term memory thing. It's like everyone, every summer, everyone's like, boy, this is a hot summer. Like, I'm pretty sure last summer was hot too. It's weird. It's just weird. And now I live in a place where there's actually a winter and everyone's like, boy, this winter. And you're like, oh,
cold, huh?
I came from Southern California. Last winter seemed just as cold. No, there's a lot of snow this year. And so it's...
Never thought of it that way.
That's so true. Oh man. So you said things get wild, right? And you and Kyle talking about like the Wild West and kind of you said an industry it still has testosterone. There's just like a lot of energy and there's a lot of kind of proactive hunting and gathering and proactive maneuvering and positioning constantly. It's the constant basis. You have quite a bit of involvement in an industry that seems similar to me. And I'll put them together in a second. You have individuals who can play a really tough ground game, right? Every morning there's sales meetings. Every day they're meeting customers face to face. Every day they're dealing with hundreds and thousands and across the industry, probably millions of people in service drives coming through and having problems with their cars and dealing with facilities and regulations all day long, right? Just pounding the ground game, face to face, nose to nose, bayonet to bayonet kind of mentality, right? Yeah. Obviously with customer service in mind. But then you start to go up and you realize the leadership is getting increasingly more sophisticated as time goes on because of technology, because of a more connected world. And so you have like the Brian Benstocks, who who will Saturday morning be firing up the sales team, talking about leadership and development and having grit and doing what it takes to get the job done. Meanwhile, he's traveling Europe, having wine with some of the most, sophisticated international business people. He's at the highest levels of conversation. He can keep up with anybody on just about any topic. And I look, and you're involved in the metal recycling business, right? Which some people would say is scrapping, right? But those are some of the most sophisticated business people once you get to know them and you see them. Why do you think those similarities exist? Like, what do you see between the two of those? Because you know the recycling business really well. You know auto quite a bit better than you did a couple of years ago.
Yes.
Like, what do you take from all of that?
I mean, and again, and it's hard to articulate. I'll do my best, but there's something about the people in both industries. Again, it's hard to explain. They can look at 20 acres and they could say, let's put a lot here, and then we're going to ship in X amount of cars, and cars are big, and then there's transportation, and there's like all, and they're like, and it doesn't phase them. Or in the recycling industry, it's also kind of construction, demo, all that. And they could be like, hey, let's get rid of these 10 buildings. We should level it, and then we should put and they're driving in these massive machines. Everything is big. When you get around people who deal with physically big items and things that require transportation and moving and earth movers, and like, there's just something about those types of people honestly see the world as this massive play box, and they're not afraid to do literally big things. That is the one thing that I see in both industries. There's nothing small, because you can't think small. Even a small print dealership is massive, and the logistics involved. Back to the DNA of it, it requires big. We're not scared. Like the average human being is like, oh, I want to do something to my house. I got to go get a permit at the city. And that's going to take forever. And what if they don't, what if they find out I did the deck? I did it myself. Like permits scare people, and people in big industry somehow are like, get permits to take down entire cities. Like the average Joe is like, I just got pinged.
My railing height is 2 inches too short.
But exactly. And you guys are like moving entire like suburbs, like
It's gonna reroute, right?
Right. It's just like, like it's like the mat, like they've got all the orange cones. They can go wherever they want with their orange cones. Just shut stuff down.
It's a game of SimCity to them.
It is. So that's what I see.
Gee.
Every time I literally know a dealership that the streets got built around the dealership footprint, right? Because that was the only way that it was going to happen, right? So you have those types of things. When I think about this, like thinking big mentality, when you talk to, like this morning, we're having a conversation on an app called Clubhouse with a bunch of dealers. Right. And the conversation that someone from cars.com goes, well, when you go to the bank and you're looking to go from a floor plan of like $1 or $2 million, you've got to be ready to if you're going to acquire this inventory, to go to $3 to $5 million. Just numbers thrown around.
Matter of fact,
right? It's like a matter of fact thing that to grow your floor plan expenses just increase by millions of dollars, for a single rooftop franchise. And when you think about that, like the whole of the auto industry is big, but that's like the general manager of a McDonald's being like, our scale is going from $3 to $5 million. Now they're not the same footprint, but it's like the franchise mindset is not the same as any other industry that is in a franchise mindset. Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's
well, where the average person's conversation is walking out of a Costco with diapers and a tub of peanut butter, wondering how they spent $300. So it's like hard for them to wrap their head around how big the influence and how big the opportunity actually is.
It's
and Michael, that's a great point too, because wrapped up in there as well is then also the ability for people to take hits, right? Because the person walking out of Costco, they kind of take that hit, but then they're kind of like, man, to really take advantage of Costco, I need another freezer. But that freezer is going to cost me, right? And for them though, but they're kind of working through that, but that's a hit. And then you buy the freezer and you got more room and you're kind of making the Costco work for you now. You're learning to take hits. On the other side, these dudes, when they take hits, it's like, I think we might get pinged for 2 million. I think we might get pinged for 300. I think if we do that, I think if OSHA shows up, that's a 360,000. I visit a facility, a recycling facility, and they're always getting pinged for oil and water. That's the big thing. Water runoff, all that stuff. Okay. They literally, if you went to an intersection anywhere and took a sample of the city water at any intersection, it's way higher because cars stop there and oil leaks, right? So that's being broken all the time. But I just gotten someone, they were like, yeah, whatever department just showed up, they're all 180, moving on. They took $180,000 fine in the morning. Moving on, because if you can because to live in a world of 180, I mean, let's think about this. How much money you got to have in your pocket to not be bummed out to lose $180? I need about $1,000. If I got $1,000 in my pocket and I can't find 180 out of that, I'm like,
it sucks, but I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm okay. So you think of the numbers you got to play with. And I think that understanding that's the love I have for people that do big business is they start playing at a game where the multiples aren't just because they're bigger numbers. I love the hits that they take. I love watching my clients, in the morning, we're about to get off and you see me on that phone call and their face just kind of goes down for a second. They take a breath and you go like, what happened? It's like, and I always say, how much did you just lose? 500, 500, 600. And you're like, woo. I mean, like, I love being around those big dogs. Like, it's fun. It's fun. It's exciting.
But here's the thing is if you can take, like you're saying, if you can take the hits like that, then you have the perspective of what you need to do, which is from like a business perspective, the growth that you need to have. And then what that trickles down to is the people that you get to bring along with you, right? And so, like, I talk to so many auto dealers, and they eat it up when their people are making good money and taking care of their families and buying new houses and getting their first brand new car. They eat it up as a culture, and I think that that's probably also the same in these other industries that, like, They literally, it's like a high for them, not to sell a car, but a high for them to hear about their employee buying their first new house as a family. Yeah. Gets them all excited. You see like social media posts. It's like, my employee just bought a house. Epic, right? Yeah. And that's that big mindset. That's that big mentality. People want people to win. Like, not a lot of other industries do that. You don't see any other industry being like, Steve just got a promotion and look at the new car he bought. No one talks that way. That's what I mean by there's something about the DNA in the auto industry that is about, again, there is a sexiness because we're talking about cars, we're talking about identity, we're talking about brand that it spills over. And in a world where you would think it would have been banned by now. It should have been canceled. Every car dealership, everyone in auto should have been canceled like 16 months ago.
That's an interesting thought. I mean,
and yet
the industry was deemed an essential business.
Yeah.
And allowed to continue to operate.
Because it turns out when there's a real fight, you kind of want those dudes that know how to throw a punch. And the auto industry knows how to throw a punch.
Yeah, there is definitely, we've been talking a lot about this cultural convergence that's happening around automotive right now, where you have, for the first time in a really long time, automotive in the center of pop culture conversation because of EVs. So now it's in all the news outlets. You have like an Elon Musk who is kind of like a cultural icon, an entrepreneurial icon, and Teslas have become a status symbol, right? And obviously the game is changing and shifting, and the fact that the industry has so much cultural implication now But if you look a layer behind that, like you back up like 3 or 4 years, you realize the auto industry has incredible political leverage because of the bigness of it, right? The largest retail industry. There's so many dealers and dealer groups that we know that are like, hey, did you know we are the largest sales tax payer in Wisconsin? Right.
And that creates swagger, and that creates swagger.
Yeah.
There's no getting around that.
But there is a real, and I think it's a divergence from the mentality of like the stigma of auto dealers. And you've seen this, Darren, over the last couple of years as you've met a lot more auto dealers. There is a sophistication and a genuine, like, I don't even know. It's like a grassroots care for people. And it's the biggest misinterpretation of the auto industry that's out there in the stigma. Care for not only the people that work for the dealership, but care for people in the community. And so like, there's like this, not a contradiction, like a counterpoint of like the ability to have the swagger on the one side. And on the other side is like, if you remove that from culture, from employment culture and from community, everybody would notice. They just don't realize it right now.
Well, and that goes back to the recycling industry, the new project I'm doing with John Sacco called Repurposed. That's what we're chronicling, is that if you were to shut down recycling facilities, everything's done. The automotive industry is done. There would be no automotive industry if you shut down recycling facilities across this country on day.
He shared a stat about EVs. It was on social, and he actually shared about like, it was something. Was it 70s or 80% of the metals like surrounding an EV battery?
70%. Well, first of all, 70% of all metal, all steel in America is recycled. Is from recycled material.
Wow.
70%.
All. Did you say all steel?
All.
So what you're saying is we need to invest in steel recycling.
Well, people already have.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
But I'm saying in particular, I'm saying
Market has
He said, "You
adjusted.
remember
Oh
those
yeah,
big
no,
business
yes,
things?"
no, absolutely, no. This is and much like how auto during the pandemic was like, well, there's no cars, right? Well, so and they went to service, right? And their service double, triple, quadrupled all the work everyone's doing as far as service. But that there are companies. I mean, you got companies like John Deere. John Deere has their own foundry that they're bringing scrap in, and they're actually making parts here in America with recycled, because that's what you need. You can't service the amount of metal that's needed every single day, from a certain kind of metal that's going to be the plate on the back of something, to automotive, to rebar. Remember, think about all the rebar in this country. Think about all the rebar. Like, just that still comes from 70% recycled material, right? So all those cars, everything, the shredders that are tearing apart cars, all that stuff. I mean, if you don't have the recycling industry, we don't have anything. But that all ties into this big group of people playing a big global game. This is a commodities game, and vehicles are just commodities.
NFTs.
Yeah. But you know what's funny though, Michael, is cars are NFTs.
Oh, they absolutely are.
Oh, yes.
Right.
But
So
I'm just thinking.
Yeah. No, but you're right. I get you. As much
I
as I
own
love
a
all
gorilla
that stuff.
picture.
Yeah, right. Well, that's just collectibles, right? No,
Right.
and
That's fair.
no one's taking that as their item to a desert island.
It makes sense though, because it's stuff you don't on an average day to day, you don't think about what you just like, how much rebar is running through not just this country, the world. Like, and I think about, I have a team member, and she's like, I don't know why I thought about this, but just like not too much prior to the pandemic, I invested in all these glass companies, and all of my friends were like, you're an idiot. And then the pandemic happens, and everyone needed glass to make the vials, to make to ship and she's like, my portfolio exploded.
What?
Exploded. I was like, dang. Now that's why I'm like, I got to get into metal.
Yeah, it's too late.
No, and I'll hook you up with some really great ways to think about that off the show, Michael. But it really is like, it is. I'll give you one example. I'll take Cass in the Bay Area. Every single day at their recycling facility, forget the big contracts with people. Just talk about what they call average sort of peddlers, people that come in every day with a washing machine. They've maybe gone around the neighborhood. There's people that make a living just picking up scrap all day long and bringing it into recycling facilities.
Yep.
In one facility in the Bay Area, a place like Cass Recycling,
And that's CASS.
CASS.
Are they a sponsor?
If you were there,
They don't need to.
and in the course of 5 or 6 hours, you're going to get the equivalent of 5-6 stories by 30-40 yards of just scrap being brought in and appliances every single 3 to 4 hours.
Whoa. Wow.
And that's no union, that's no organizations. Those are just individual people bringing appliances and scrap in their trucks every single day. If there's not a recycling facility, I remember what 1978 looked like. People just dumped stuff. And now at the speed at which that we are replenishing what we need and what we get, it would be Wall-E. We would be under so much stuff. It would be insane. But it goes to that mindset of the auto industry. It's people who see so much bigness and they go, I want a piece of it. I want to be able to control it. I want to manage it. I want to make money off it. I want to help people. I want to bless people. I want to grow from this. It's just a different mindset. It's big, it's heavy, it's shiny. You either love it or you don't.
Yeah.
This is why I'm like, can we stop talking about how to sell cars? Because there's so much more to this. Like, if I opened my office door and called my 9-year-old daughter and said, what's a car dealer do? She'd be like, Dad, don't ask dumb questions. They sell cars. But to your point, there's an undercurrent that where there are moves moving so big and all we can figure out how to talk about is how to move more metal or like how to sell cars. What's your F&I process? And don't get me wrong. I think all of that stuff matters. It obviously matters in the day to day, but I love how you're tying this conversation back to, in one breath, we're saying car dealers serve as a backbone to so much, to community, to, Paul, you said politics, there's a political aspect here. But if they're the backbone, how come we can say that in one breath and then in the other breath have such top level conversations like how to sell more cars? Like there's so much more going on here, which is one of the reasons why I love the industry so much.
Think about this. Look, the average catalytic converter. Right now, we know about the theft. We know about
those all of a sudden.
We know about the theft and all that stuff, but forget that for a moment. You could have a piece of junk car sitting somewhere, right? That someone would pay you to go scrap, right? Now they might give you a couple $100 because in the scrap market, they're going to get $500, $600, $700 for it. So it's a good deal. All that works out. But now the specialty item of a company like Converter Reclaim that takes that catalytic converter, slices it, cuts it, has very particular things. Now they're pulling out of that catalytic converter
Palladium, right?
Palladium, diamonds, gold, but more importantly, about $1,500 to $2,000 now of raw materials for those that know how to move it on the market.
Who was the guy that was like, I bet if we put all this stuff in here, real expensive stuff, it'll make the air cleaner.
Right. That's a whole other insane, like how brilliant people can be, right? But someone did that. And so sitting on all that stuff, but this comes back to where I think automotive has another look. I think once automotive begins to understand their relationship with the steel industry, with the recycling industry, with the metals industry, I think there's another opportunity there.
Well, we have a couple people on this podcast that might be able to put those things together. You know what I'm saying? And Dave Meltzer would be remiss. We'd be remiss if we didn't get Dave Meltzer in on some kind of overlap agreement.
Yeah.
Darren, as always, we could just sit here for the next 2 hours and solve the world's problem, or at least make an attempt to change the world's
thinking. Act like it. Act
Yeah,
like it.
you go drink some bourbon and be like, "We did
Right.
good work today." But we're so excited to spend some time with you in person, in one place, in Philly at a SoduCon. Thanks for giving us some of your time today, and we cannot wait to make some trouble together in just a few weeks.
I can't wait. So thanks, guys, for having me. Michael, great to meet you. I'm looking forward to hanging more, man. I'm just a big fan of your face at this point. So I'm into it.
Now I'm
into
blushing. I don't know about the two of you, but I don't think I've ever had so much fun learning about scrap metal in my entire life.
I think everything, when you're with Darren, learning about everything is fun.
Absolutely.
Because he just finds a way to like punk rock it. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, maybe that is the most punk rock thing I've ever heard of. Catalytic converters.
What are the chances that we would have a Newsies reference and then he's just randomly like,
that's unbelievable.
Newsies.
I need to tell my kids about that ASAP. We're going in and we need to blow this up on the internet. We need to be like Darren Doane, find him in the shot, take a photo, tag him.
It's perfect.
I bet
this is like, I have so many thoughts from that conversation, but I'm always intrigued by learning about kind of the subfloor to the industry. Like, by and large, you look at conversations in the industry and it's like how to negotiate a car deal. And you're like, we're still talking about this and like to each their own. I'm not knocking it, but to have someone that's clearly thinking about the layer beneath those conversations, like what is actually making the ebbs and flows of this industry, I found incredibly intriguing.
It blows my mind. Actually, I had another side conversation with Darren that like the majority of things like brake pads in manufacturing are made out of recycled metals. So like this connectivity between different industries that we're able to grab from people that are outside of our industry that are going, hey, zoom out a little bit. There's things that are impacting like global economies that auto has is really, really fun. And even to see, you know, and this is a little bit of an aside to the interview as well, but to hear from him, his experiences with like retail or trading his car or selling his car. And I think he, you know, in the interview gave us some of those things where it's like, hey, look, the automotive industry, from my perspective, from the outside looking in, is like this wild, this big business, this large real estate sector that like people should be paying attention to, but it's this unsung hero of just industry in America that we forget about because it almost becomes regular. But no, these are impressive people managing large amounts of real estate and inventory that we should be looking to for a lot more just in industry in general.
His perspective on like big things, people that like know how to do big things and you know, it's the normal things of life or things that may seem big to the typical person. To them, it's just like, oh yeah, we can do that. Why not? Well, yeah, we need to, and even think of how that plays down to even like the charitable efforts of auto dealers. Oh, 200,000 backpacks. Yeah. We were on the phone with it's like the chairman or the president of the Philadelphia Auto Dealers Association. He's like, yeah, we give out like 200,000 backpacks. Yeah, we get them manufactured independently. So we get them all in, you know, so that we can actually do more backpacks and we fit the kids up, or coats. It was coats, actually. We had to get the coats made. Like, logistically speaking, that's not an easy thing.
No.
But the auto dealers are like, yeah, sure, we can do that. Why not? Well, because it can be done. So let's do it.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's going to be like some auto group's logo on the spaceship that's going to Mars in a couple of weeks, or going to the moon in a couple of weeks. We're like, oh yeah, going to Mars, going to the moon again? Yeah, big deal, whatever. We got this.
I'm good. Yeah, somebody's going to need to use
at the
something
same
up
time.
there.
It's actually the logo was done in Microsoft Paint by an 8th grader on the thing, right?
No, not by an 8th grader.
Sorry, shots fired. Hey, look, if you enjoyed this conversation with Darren, you're going to really enjoy meeting him in person, and just follow his content because his insights are incredible at all times. For Paul Daly, Michael Cirillo, and myself, this is Auto Collabs. We'll see you next time. Welcome to Auto Collabs. Why are we recording? recording.
Are we rolling yet?